Hi everyone, Doug here from Verus Engineering. Today's video I'm going to show you how to install an air oil separator on our FK8 Civic Type R. So if you have a Civic Type R, this is the video for you. So these are the tools that you're going to need to install the air oil separator on the Civic Type R. I've also included the two extra tools that you're going to need to install the coolant add-on kit, which are the hose clamps. Then we have a 9/16 wrench, a ratchet, a 7/32 inch socket. We have two Allen key wrenches. Well, that is a 3mm and a 2.5mm tape measure, a flathead screwdriver, a Phillips head screwdriver, a utility knife, needle nose pliers, or you can in some instances use hose clamp pliers, which do come in very handy, and then some cutters as well. So here we have all of the components that are in the hardware kit for the air oil separator. It comes with the mounting bracket for the air oil separator. The air oil separator comes with all the fittings pre-installed, so you don't need to worry about that. So the mounting bracket is going to fit on the back of the air oil separator, and it's going to use these 3 M6 bolts with these 3 M6 washers to fit in place. We also have 6 inches of 3/8 inch hose. We have 2 hose clamps and we have 2 reducers. They go from 1/2 inch to 3/8. And then for mounting the bracket onto the car, we have an M4 rivet nut and an M4 bolt, and an M5 rivet nut and an M5 bolt, and they both use the same M5 washers. We also have 33 inches of 1/2 inch hose and then 37 inches respectively of 1/2 inch hose, and then some zip ties. And then if you're going to also install the coolant add-on kit, I'll show you over here. So we have the backing plate for the coolant add-on kit. So we have 4 extra bolts here, M6 bolts, that are going to go onto the coolant backing plate. That's because the backing plate itself is going to go onto the back of the air oil separator, and then you already have the 3 bolts for the bracket, which is going to go on top of the backing plate. Then we have 4 hose clamps. We have here's a pre-assembled banjo bolt, and then just to show you the exploded view, we have the banjo bolt itself, the 2 washers, and then the adapter so that we can run our hose line to it. We have the hose line here, and we have some zip ties too. First of all, we're going to start by removing this engine cover. So that's 5 10mm bolts. So I'm going to use a socket and an impact driver. Now we have that out of the way, we're going to install our bracket for the air oil separator. So we're going to go here, and there are already some holes for you that you can use. This one, you can already see that I've installed the M5 rivet nut, and this one further towards the outside of the car, it's going to take an M4 rivet nut, and I'll show you how to install that right now. Now there's a few ways in which you can install a rivet nut using our tool. Firstly, you could use a spanner, or as I'm reliably informed, a wrench, and a socket with a ratchet, and you can ratchet it on, or due to accessibility in this case, I'm going to use a ratchet spanner, or a ratchet wrench I think it's called here, and just a normal Allen key tool. But that doesn't change how we set up the tool to begin with. So we take our rivet nut here, and then we have our tool, and we can use all sorts of sizes here, but for our case we're going to use an M4 bolt. Slide it on, use a washer to make sure it doesn't go through the hole, and then we're going to screw that on. Try and get it nice and straight so you don't cross thread it. Screw it down till it touches. I'm going to insert, get it in the right hole. We're going to insert the rivet nut into the correct hole. We're going to take our ratchet spanner or ratchet wrench, squeeze it on there. There we go, that's good. And then Unfortunately, all you can see is my hand right now, but I'll get it out of the way in a second. Then we're gonna put the Allen key in there, so you can see now I've got the ratchet spanner on there, the Allen key inside, and then it's just a case of tightening this up. So now, as you can see, we have both the riv nuts installed. We're going to take one M5 button head bolt, as you can see here, and one M4 with the same washers on, and we're going to use those to install our bracket. It's also worth noting that the M4 bolt takes a 2.5mm Allen wrench, and the M5 takes a 3mm. Now, it's never a bad idea to give yourself a little bit extra wiggle room, so we're going to just move this wiring harness back. So this side that's nearest the driver's seat, I'm going to slide to the side, and then this one here, there's one clip, and that should just give us a bit more wiggle room, and if we sort of lift it out of the way, it'll give us a bit more access down here. Next on the agenda is to remove this PCV hose, and I'm going to be using these hose clip pliers. You can just use some normal needle nose pliers, and I probably will use needle nose pliers for the lower clip because it's a bit more inaccessible. Slides down there like that. There we go. And then another little tip, if you want, is you can get any pliers on here really, and if you give the hose a bit of side to side action, that will just break the seal, and that should help it pop off without much resistance. Okay, so this is the hose we've just taken off up at the top, and if we have a look down here, we should see the next hose clip that we're going to be removing. I'll try and get a shot of me removing that, but it's pretty tricky because the camera is exactly where my hand wants to go. So if not, that is the second clip that we need to remove. Remove that clip down there, and then the one up here that I showed you before, and then just pull the hose off. Okay, so with this hose line removed, what we're going to do is flip it round the other way so that the end that was attached up top is now going onto the bottom. Obviously you can't see me do this because of where the camera is, but you know where it's located because you've just removed it. And then this end is going to go into our air oil separator. So we're just going to leave it up here for now, but don't forget to tighten the clamp on both ends when it comes to final assembly. So I'm going to do the bottom end clamp right now. Now if we bring our attention back to the front of the engine, we're going to be removing these two Jubilee clamps or worm clamps. They are, so that one here and this one here, they are security style clamps, so you have to either, hopefully you can see here, cut a slit in it with a Dremel, so that you can then use a flathead screwdriver to unscrew it. Or on this one, I ended up having to cut down the line of the clamp just to release it because it wasn't undoing with the flat head screwdriver slit. But we are going to be supplying you with new clips anyway, so it doesn't really matter. But hopefully, if that's undone enough, we're going to remove these two, one and two. Excellent. Then before we do anything else, we're going to loosen these two clamps using a 7/32 socket, and then we're going to rotate it just forward a little bit, or rotate it towards the passenger compartment, because that's going to give us a better angle for when we fit our hoses, which is the next thing we're going to do. We're not going to tighten these bits up yet, but we are just getting it ready so that we can maneuver it. Next, we're going to be fitting these 3/8 inch to 1/2 inch hose adapters into both of the locations that we just removed this pipe from. But to help with installation, we're going to get our WD-40, give it a good spray, and then our 1/2 inch hose line here, and we're just going to squeeze it on like that, and then we can install it and route it, which I'm going to be showing you how to do next. Now here comes the fun part with our 1/2 inch to 3/8 adapter installed. We're going to route, or for my English fans out there, we're going to route the hose. Gonna install it. Get it installed. I'm going to route it down here. And then it's kind of up to you to find the best passage where it's going to do the least amount of rubbing and going to be least in the way. But for me, I find it's best to feed it under this hose line and then around the back of the engine here. It's going to pop up over here because our air oil separator is going to go there. And we're going to grab the other line now. And we're going to do the exact same thing. This one's a bit more tricky. So I think if we feed it underneath the one we just installed. There we go. This foam can move around because you can just reinstall it later. I'm going to feed that through there. Past the factory PCV valve, which is here. And then along the back of the engine like the other one. Perfect. And these additional wires you can kind of just ignore, but they're in place because we're doing testing on engine bay temperature, and they're all just temperature sensors. So with that installed, it's where you can, the benefit of having this nice and loose comes in. You can try to install it here. There we go. And that is really fundamentally how we're going to have it routed. We are obviously going to use some zip ties or cable ties to make it nice and secure, make sure it doesn't move around and vibrate and rub. But fundamentally, that is the routing for those hoses. And just a quick note, we are coming up with a solution for this coolant line. Obviously, it was connected to this hard pipe from the factory, so we're going to come up with our own solution for that, but at this stage don't worry about it because that will be available when you purchase the AOS kit. Now that we've installed our hoses, we're just going to tighten up these two Jubilee clamps or worm clamps. Just need a Phillips head for them. And of course, this is still loose, so at this stage we can still sort of maneuver it, manipulate it a bit to give us the best angle, but I find that that's pretty much the best angle for us. And then we can tighten these up. So now we've routed our hoses, or 3 of the 4 of our hoses, which is this one, which is from the crankcase ventilation system, this one, which is from the air intake, and then this one, which is from the intake manifold here. And remember, we've switched that round. This end was the end that was on the intake manifold, but we flipped it around because that's what works best for our system. We are going to mount the air oil separator, which we supply with the fittings already in place, so you don't need to worry about that. You're going to take this M5 bolt. Hopefully you can see without my hands blocking you. Hard to get a good angle, but you can take the M5 bolt, which is a 3mm Allen key, and you're just going to get that started. Don't go completely tight, because we then need to get the M4 bolt in, which is a 2.5mm Allen key. Here we go, and we need to put it in this end. If we did it completely tight, we wouldn't be able to wiggle it around so that we can get it in place. This one's a lot trickier. A little trick that you can use is you can put some grease in there, which will help it stay on the end of the Allen key if you want to do that. Or you can just struggle like I'm probably going to do. There you go, really wasn't that difficult. So we're just going to do those up. So these go into the riv nuts that we installed earlier. And then we'll just tighten up this one. And then we're going to mount the hoses, or fit the hoses. And I'll get you a better angle to see that. Okay, so these are the hoses that we've pre-installed. And then this is the final one that we're going to install at the end, because it's just short and it's really easy to install. So what I like to do is get my WD-40, and honestly I just spray it on my finger. You can spray it down the hose, but it kind of makes a mess if you just spray it on your finger. You can just sort of put it around the edge of each hose, which is going to help it slide on a little easier. Might not sound like much, but it really does make a difference. So then we're going to take our first hose there. Look at that, went on no problem. And that is from the crankcase ventilation system. The second, so this is second from the right. This is from our engine air intake. And then we're going to put our one from the intake manifold and use some pliers here for the hose clip. Just slide that up, easy peasy. And then this final cut of hose, hopefully you can see, but here where we took this hose off originally, we're going to slide it on there and then onto the air oil separator, and it really is as easy as that. Okay, just to avoid any confusion about where which hose goes to, let's start from the nearest to us, so the closest to the outside of the car on the passenger side. That small hose goes from the first port on the air oil separator into the PCV system, and then the second one goes from the, hopefully you might be able to see down there, but the engine intake manifold down there, and then goes into our PCV valve. Then the third one, I put a little blue marker on it. That goes here into the engine air intake, and then the fourth one, the final one with the little yellow mark on it, that loops around and goes into the crankcase ventilation system. So hopefully that clears that up, makes it real easy to figure out exactly where each hose goes. And you can see those two big hoses, they go around the back of the engine. One comes up through here, and the other one goes around the side here. Okay, so next on the menu we're going to remove this OEM coolant line. As you can see, it's welded to the pipe we removed for the crankcase ventilation system earlier, so we don't want it to rub and chafe and cause any damage, and it's just bulky and in the way. So we're going to, as you can see, I'm using these hose clamps. They're really worth getting, they don't cost much, and it's going to stop you making a massive mess anytime you deal with any coolant or possibly fuel or brake lines. So we're going to put those on. We're going to get our hose clamp pliers, and we're going to remove both of the clamps on either end. Hopefully you can see. So one right on this end, it feeds under here, and then again we'll do the same the other end. And then remembering the old trick of getting some pliers on the hose and just giving it a bit of side-to-side action, that will help break the seal, which means it's going to be easier to remove. Same on this end. And then we should be able to pull these off. There's one. You can try and be a bit more graceful than me, but I'll get the job done. And there's the second. So a little bit of coolant's come out, as you can see. It's kind of unavoidable. You could put some rags underneath if you wanted to avoid that, but it's not much. So that's how to remove this OEM pipe. Now we're going to take one of these 5/16 to 5/16 adapters and fit it in the hose. Also on this lower hose and on the upper hose, we're going to remove them from their original clips, locating clips. So this one I've already removed, but you will unclip it from here. And then it's just a matter of connecting up. So I would connect it up first, and then we can make it look pretty afterwards. But if we connect it up first, we can get rid of these awkward hose clamps. So that's all connected, and then we're going to make it look pretty after that. Okay, so with that in place, we are going to use some zip ties to make it nice and secure and stop it from chafing. But before we do that, I'm just going to rotate this hose clip just a bit over here, because I don't want that sharp edge right by where that hose was running. So rotate it a tad more. There we go, peace of mind there. All right, let's get some zip ties. So we're going to put one here. So the key with this is to get it snug, but not so snug that you're going to block off the pipe, or the hose should I say, on both sides. In fact, we may even rotate this clamp just a bit to get it out of the way of this line, and we'll do the same there. So we're going to get all of the hose clamps facing outwards, just in case they start rubbing. So there we go, not too tight, twist them round, but it's also not going anywhere. Okay, so that concludes our Air Oil Separator installation. Okay, so if you are hooking up the coolant to the Air Oil Separator, because we do have that function with ours, continue from here. Essentially, don't just hook this up like I've shown you if you're not going to use the coolant function on our Air Oil Separator. So we're going to clamp these off again, and we're going to undo the zip ties, and then we're going to undo the hose clips and remove the fitting. In fact, we only need to undo the fitting from one end on here, because we will be fitting, essentially we're going to be using 3 of these adapters. So we can leave this one in here. And oh, blimey, that's tricky to undo. Anyway, if you're more graceful than me, you won't have made a mess. Okay, so you can't really see here, but I have actually got it in place. So what I recommend doing now is going straight on to the back of the AOS, and then we're going to put some of these bolts in just to snug it down so that that seal doesn't move. So the outer ones, the 4 on the outside, they're all going to be 12 mil long M6 bolts. So we just get some in place and started. Don't have to do them up tight, just do them up hand tight so that that seal's not going to go anywhere, which even with just 2 in, it's probably not, but it's always best to put 4 of them in, just to be sure. Okay, fantastic. They're all in, the seal's in. It's not the best fun, but it's not too bad to get it all in. Then we're going to put our mount on. So we're going to do the exact same as with the 4 on the outer edge, except it's a 16mm long bolt. There we go. Always start anything you can by hand if you don't want to cross thread things. We've all been there, God knows. And then after that, what I recommend doing before we tighten these up, we're going to fit the banjo bolts, but not tight. So this is the banjo bolt, the actual bolt. The washer goes on there. This is where we're going to hook our coolant up to, other washer, and we're just going to put it in place. We're not going to do it up tight. We're going to do it up because what we're going to do when we get to the car is we're going to kind of offer up. Here it goes, just leave it a little slack. We're going to offer it up to the engine bay and see where is the best location to fit our coolant lines, our coolant hoses. You know, no point doing it up tight in this location if actually that is the best for our coolant hoses. So we're just going to leave it loose for now while we figure it out. Okay, then we're going to tighten all of these up. Best practice on something like this is to go in opposite, bolts, a bit like doing up a wheel. So we want to do that star pattern. Okay, so now what we are going to do is we're going to take our 15-inch length of hose, and we are going to also put a hose clamp on there. That is very important for this. You do not want to forget that. And we're going to install it onto the AOS outside of the car, because when you install it on the car, there is no room. So we're going to do it outside. And then we're going to take our 33-inch length of 5/16 hose. Same thing with the clamp. We're going to fit it on as well, because we do not want these coming off. All right, put that on. We're going to do up these clamps, and then we're going to offer it up to the car, and then we're going to install these 2 hoses onto the coolant line, and then everything else is just as it was if you weren't installing the coolant adapter for our AOS. Okay, so now as you can see, we have the Air Oil Separator back installed, but this time with the coolant attachment on it. So if I put my torch up here, hopefully you'll be able to see this one, which is the 33-inch length of hose, and it's the furthest inwards. We are going to feed under this hose line here, and then it's essentially going to run the same route as the hose for the crankcase ventilation system, which is on the furthest bar inward for the air oil separator. So we're going to run it through here. So we go under there. Don't worry, I'll get a better shot of this side so you can see the exact route we've taken. And then it's going to go just tuck around the back here. And I'm just going to show you what that looks like from this end as well, so you can really get a good idea of what it looks like. Okay, so I know right now this looks like just a glorious mess of wires, kind of is, but these won't all be there when you're working on your car, so you don't need to worry about that. Just imagine they're not there. So this is the line. We've tucked it under the hose further back towards the air oil separator, and then it just runs along here alongside this hose for the crankcase ventilation system. And then I can find somewhere to put my torch. There we go. And then it's just a case of hooking it up. But before we do that, we need to remember to put the hose clamp on it, because really, like I said earlier, you do not want this to come off. That'll be a very bad day for everyone. So then just squeeze that on. Might be worth spraying it with a bit of WD-40 or similar. There we go, and then you're going to do that clamp up. Okay, and on this side it's even easier, so we're just going to put our hose clamp on there. In fact, you want to make it so it's as easy as possible for you to get at with a Phillips head screwdriver. And then we're going to take our hose line here, and then this is the 15-inch section of hose, fit to the furthest outward slot on the Air Oil Separator. Put a bit of WD-40, never hurts. And then we're just going to push that on too. And then we'll tighten that up as well. Okay, so now that we have both of the lines, the coolant hoses fitted, and everything is secured with new clamps, it's this one I don't even have to show you where to run it. It's just a case of removing it from the clip up on top of the engine and then just folding it the other way. Just make sure that you've not crimped it or got a bend in it so that coolant can't flow, but you shouldn't have that. And now it's just a case of refitting all of the other hoses as you would normally, and it really is as simple as that. Okay, and that concludes our Air Oil Separator installation for the FK8 Civic Type R. I think you'll agree it's not too difficult to install if you approach it logically, and if you don't get overwhelmed by anything. There's nothing that's too difficult to fit with this. Maybe that tricky seal for the coolant, but really not too difficult. If you do have any questions, don't hesitate to contact us at sales@verus-engineering.com, and we'll be happy to answer any questions. But for now, that is the end of the video. You've hopefully just installed your Air Oil Separator, and we'll look forward to seeing you in the next one.